Hey, it's Ryan David, and the following video is a second clip of a lecture that I gave to my Introduction to Psychology course. And this clip specifically is about personality theory and Sigmund Freud. It's about Sigmund Freud's contribution to psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. So what I do in this video is talk about psychoanalysis, the libido, hysteria. But I want to just preface the video that you're about to watch with this one point, and that is that, sometimes things in psychology, specifically with Freud, can be complicated. So I try to take some complicated aspects and ideas and concepts and really try to simplify them. So again, this is an introductory to psychology course. I'm trying to simplify some very complicated concepts just for the sake of understanding with my students. What I encourage all of you to do is, if you find Freud or personality theory or psychology interesting, definitely read up and read more about these concepts, because I try to simplify the concepts just for the sake of learning. So keep that in mind as you hear me talk about these complicated aspects or concepts like psychoanalysis or hysteria, those sorts of things. Take it with a grain of salt and definitely do your own research and look into it some more if you're interested, but just want to put that out there and keep that in your mind as you watch the video. I hope you enjoy. Be sure to subscribe if you look forward to more videos just like this one. Remember, one of the geniuses of Freud is this concept of the unconscious mind. Freud's proposal or his contribution to therapy was called psychoanalysis. His form of therapy and of therapeutical clinical work is called psychoanalysis. If we don't know that already, he contributed psychoanalysis. And so psychoanalysis was obviously analyzing conscious thoughts and the underlying, in short, to put it simply, analyzing and talking to individuals, obviously consciously, and discovering or interpreting what was going on an unconscious level, and maybe making some connections there, to put it loosely. So psychoanalysis says a sex drive, what Freud said, and I already mentioned this, sex drive, Freud said the sex drive was the main determinant of personality development. This is a huge point here, because this is really the driving factor, pun intended, when it comes to our behavior and our personality. The sex drive, okay? Now, early on in Freud's career, he used the term libido. You might have heard that term libido, and you hear that synonymously or interchangeably used when it comes to sex drive. But later on in Freud's career, he kind of did away with libido as just relating to sex drive. He actually modified or adapted that definition of libido to include other energies, not just sex, I believe. It's been a while, and you go back and read my paper that I wrote. But he did modify or kind of change his use of that word. But we hear the word libido, understand that the term was generated, initially used to describe this sex drive. So when you hear libido, understand, for all intents and purposes, what we're talking about in this chapter, libido is the term used to describe sex drive. And Freud said that the libido, or the sex drive, was important because that's what's determining and driving all of our behavior, starting from the time that we're toddlers, infants, really, you'll see here in a bit. Up until right now, throughout the rest of your life, Freud said. Also, one of Freud's contributions to psychoanalysis or to psychotherapy involved this concept of hysteria. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on it, but I want to mention it because you've probably heard the word hysterical before. What Freud found was that it's possible for an individual to have physical symptoms. So physical symptoms like, pain in your right arm, or the loss of the use of your legs. Maybe you're paralyzed, can't use your legs. So those are physical symptoms. What he found was that it's possible for issues or situations to manifest in the form of physical symptoms when there's no physical cause. So there's pain in your right arm, and you go to the doctor and you get a scan and you get it looked at and you get blood work done, and the doc says there's nothing physically wrong with your right arm. We don't know what to do for you because there's nothing wrong with your arm. But it hurts, doc, I can't move it, but there's nothing wrong with it. So what Freud found was that there can be a psychological cause, and that can come from an unconscious conflict. An easier example or a better example to emphasize this or to make this point would be an individual, say, and there's documented research, or I should say there's documented cases of examples like the one I'm going to tell you. They're rare, possibly rare, and few and far between, but they're documented cases. So an individual can't walk. They're maybe, for whatever reason, at some point in time in their lives, they lose the use of their legs, right? And so they're wheelchair bound, or You know, something's wrong and they can't use their legs, they can't walk. They go to the doctor, same thing I just described, and the doctor tells them, well, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with your legs. I don't know why you can't walk. So these individuals would go to these medical doctors to see what was wrong with them physically, and they would tell them nothing's wrong with you. Excuse me. So those same individuals, what happened to in these documented cases, went to therapy, psychological therapy, psychotherapy. And working with Freud, particularly these cases I'm talking about, that these are the ones that he kind of derived this conclusion from. And after psychotherapy, months or possibly years of psychotherapy, what was found was that they resolved some unconscious conflicts. That individual who couldn't walk and was wheelchair bound, they found that through psychotherapy, they alleviated some of the unconscious conflicts that took place that were going on psychologically. Possibly in one of the cases there was maybe childhood abuse, physical abuse, or some sort of inordinate fear that was overwhelming that individual unconsciously. They're adults now. They don't remember it, they don't think about it every day. But through psychotherapy, they were able to resolve that conflict that was suppressed, and we'll talk about defense mechanisms in a bit, that was suppressed and outside of their conscious mind. What Freud found was when those unconscious conflicts were resolved, miraculously they got the use of their limbs. And that person was able to walk. So that's a physical ailment or a physical symptom that was manifested out of the unconscious mind. I think I talked about it here, the power of the unconscious mind. And how, you know, you might think you forget something, but it doesn't go anywhere. It just goes under the rug. It's still in your mind, though. It's still in your brain. And just because you don't think about it consciously doesn't mean it's not going to seep out and affect you some other way. Well, these physical symptoms are it's seeping out. You're not bothered by it psychologically, but now it's been suppressed and pushed down so far, but it's so powerful of a thought that you don't think about it consciously, but now it's manifesting into something physical. And it could be any other physical ailment too. So that's another thing that Freud found, and he dealt with a couple different cases. There's some criticism about, you know, the selective cases that he dealt with. He dealt with, just to put it loosely, a lot of crazy women. And so he made a lot of conclusions about women based on the small sample size of, not that all women aren't crazy, all y'all are crazy, but I'm just kidding. Freud said pretty much all y'all are crazy because he dealt with like a handful of very, very crazy ones, and that's not really fair. So that's one of the criticisms of Freud. We're all crazy, right? But Freud made some generalizations, or I should say one of the criticisms of him is that he made some generalizations about women based on the extreme cases that he worked with. Which is not very doesn't make what he had, his results, very valid in that sense. But he did do some work and find some things in the cases that he dealt with. So just something to point out.